Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we're doing a book review of Submarine Oaks, How to Make a Plant Love You. So as you can see, I've finished read the book and I made a lot of tabs because there's so many information and quotable quotes in this book, even though it's only under 200 pages. So instead of me telling you what this book is about, I'm gonna let Submarine Oaks tell you directly. I met her at her book signing in Little Leaf in DC on July 26th. And she's really nice in person. She's like exactly the same person as you see in her YouTube videos. And she was also kind enough to give me advice on my Pilea peperomioides, which I'm like struggling a little bit, and some tips on where to shop for plants in Chinatown. So if you haven't seen it, here's the link to that up here. At her book signing event, she described what her book is all about. So I'm just gonna let her tell you what it is about, and then afterwards we're gonna go ahead with our book review.
How to Make a Plant Love You is, on the surface level, it is about plants. It's not like a typical plant book. So if you were like hoping to see copious colored pictures or a repeat of the Houseplant Masterclass or Plant One on Me, it's not that. It's a little bit more of like a philosophical and spiritual journey through plants and seeing and deepening our knowledge and appreciation of plants. However, the book is also a metaphor about people and how we treat ourselves and the people around us and also our greater community and the life lessons that like one could learn actually by surrounding yourself and giving yourself the time to live and observe and love plants. So at the very surface level, you could probably look at it as a plant book, yes. I actually went to Barnes & Noble the other day and I saw it in the gardening section, which I was like surprised about because yes, it's a book on gardening, but I also consider it a little bit more like a relationship guide. Maybe it could be kind of one of those spiritual self-helpy guides. But really when I was talking about this book, it was one of those books that the publisher actually didn't know where to place it. And I think it's just really interesting when you go out and you do something. Oftentimes people need to categorize you and they want to put you into a certain silo, and oftentimes we're not that, and our thoughts aren't like that, and our lives aren't like that. It's a lot messier. And so I was very thankful when Optimism Press, which is a division of Penguin Random House, which is a new imprint, asked me to pitch the book to them because it was really a chance. It was like rolling the dice and saying, okay, well, this didn't exist before, and of course, has anybody ever actually worked in the publishing world here? Okay, you know rocking the boat is not good.
I was really impressed by Simon actually like watching this.
Yeah. So Simon Sinek is the person whose imprint it is. He's a really great mind in kind of business world. And if you're not familiar with his work, he's got like maybe like the third most watched TED Talk in the world called Start With Why. And really just what it is in a nutshell is like we often tell people what we do, but we never tell people why we do what we do. And that's actually the most important thing to kind of start with. Why do you do what you do? And so, you probably, if you've seen like any interviews with me or anything like that, I always tell people that, my North Star has always been connecting people back to nature. And so this book is an ability to be able to do that. And as Molly had just said, I had written 2 other books. And again, this is how people usually silo you. The book that I did 2 years ago was helping people reduce their sugar intake. And to me, it all is related. What we eat, what we wear, what we put on our bodies, it becomes part of the way that you live your life. And when people always ask me, like, how are ways to actually help heal yourself or make you have a little bit more of a sustainable lifestyle, at the end of the day, it's like, what we do every day, like what we do every moment of our day actually becomes our life. And the things that we do on a routinized basis, the things that we ritualize, those are the things that actually change us as a human being. The people that we surround ourselves every day with is like who we become. That age-old adage of like you are the average of the 10 people that you hang out with. Like that is so true. If you're hanging out with people who are like ebullient and like excited and effervescent and happy, then chances are that's going to resonate with you as well. I don't know if you're like a sponge for people's energy, but if I'm on a subway and then somebody comes on the subway and they're like angry and mad, you have a tendency to like kind of suck that up. And so I really do believe that how you surround yourself, what you do every day, and I talk about the rituals in the book and the rituals that I've, developed with my plants and how that has proactively changed my life. And the other thing that I really love about the book is, and I don't know if anybody's standing in this room who contributed, but when I asked the community, across Instagram and YouTube to really share how plants have positively affected their life, and not the ones that we drink or eat or smoke, because those have an important place in the world too, but really just the ones that we surround ourselves with on a daily basis, whether it's indoors or outdoors. And hundreds of people wrote in and wrote some of the most beautiful and varied stories. And I picked, certain quotes from them. And so what I really love is that this, to me, is also a book for the community, by the community. And I wish I could have actually filled it with more quotes, but actually after writing a lot of those people, nobody got back to me. So I wanted to make sure that I could use their quotes, appropriately. So the 70 or so voices that you see in the book, or that you'll read in the book, are from people who could very well be standing in this room and have really shared their stories, because each one is different, but in many ways the outcomes are the same. I talk about in this book journey a lot, and how many of us could see an Instagram post and they're like, I want to create that, that's what I want to create, and get that in the corner of my room, and they become focused on it. But really the beauty of plants is the actual journey of it, being able to deal with the spider mites. Where's the spider mites go, Chantal? Yeah. Dealing with the spider mites and learning and and having it, it's part of your journey. People talk about their plants growing in weird, strange ways, and that that is part of the journey. It's not about having the most perfect plant. You don't learn in those elements. And in the book, I even have a story about one of my colleagues who had recently undergone Hurricane Ida in Mozambique. If you watch my YouTube channel, you'll see he was the one actually helping me repot my ZZ plant. He's in the book in multiple occasions because he's a big mentor in my life. And he's just so brilliant when he works with wood. But he works with imperfect wood, which actually, in my opinion, makes you a more perfect craftsperson, because you learn to work with the imperfections that you've been given. You learn, that's what's so great about houseplant people, is that you learn from the not so perfect lighting conditions, the not so perfect humidity. It's why I think houseplant people are actually some of the best gardeners, because you are really working against the hardest of challenges, really at the end of the day, especially as you begin and your plant love grows and you end up acquiring more, and you're not quite sure where to put it because you can't optimize for them all the time. But that is part of the beauty of the journey. And I think it also, again, going back to the thing that this is a book about plants, yes, but it's also a book about people. And in that kind of imperfect wood, you learn to accept the imperfections. You learn to accept that you are not perfect, and that's okay too. That there is beauty in the imperfection of it. And there's beauty in the imperfection of the journey. And you'll see a lot of people who use quotes who talk about depression or anxiety, or losing a loved one, or having a bad relationship, and that is never going to change. If you've lost a loved one, he or she is never going to come back. And so you don't want to get rid of that journey. You don't want to, that is something that's going to be a part of your life. It's going to imprint the same way that, a lightning strike is going to imprint on a tree or anything along those lines, and that becomes, part of your story, and you just start to learn how to deal with it. So maybe that anxiety, or maybe that depression, or maybe that loss is always going to be a part of you, but learning to develop the tools and the skills and the confidence to kind of get over those humps are the things that I think are a real asset in life. And so the book actually talks about, it's not a long book. I read it in 4 hours after I wrote it, and I read the actual like physical copy because it's so different reading it like as you're writing it and then actually seeing the physical copy of it. I read it in 4.5 hours on a flight from Berlin, and I was like, for me it was like a really nice thing to be able to see all of the thoughts over the course of a year and a half come together. But I think it goes fast, and I think part of it is, and what I hope, is that you could see parts of yourself in the book, even though it's something that I wrote, you know. And I like reading things from other people's journals and books and all that kind of stuff, because you probably already think a lot of these thoughts too, but oftentimes you don't even get a chance to articulate them. And then when you hear someone else articulate them, you're just like, yeah. And I had somebody write me, who I met at the conference in Columbus, and he's a horticulturist, and he's like, I'm on your chapter 5 right now, and he goes, I'm reading it, and he said, I really feel like you're telling my story. And he said, I really, it made me remember why I'm in what I'm doing and that I love it so much. And I think that was really nice, because oftentimes you could see yourself in someone else, and that's what really resonates with people. So thank you so much for coming out and supporting. Plant people are really the best people in the world, and I mean that in every aspect of the word.
So despite its title, How to Make a Plant Love You, this is not really a how-to book. And like Rayne said, she didn't set out for this to be a coffee table book. So there are a few illustrations in this book, but not a lot of pictures. And for me personally, I would have preferred it to have a little bit more pictures, just because as a plant beginner, some of the cultivars and species she mentioned, I am not familiar with yet, and even though she mentions the common name. And for me, this reads like an undergrad thesis or a graduate research on the history and sociology of houseplants and our relationship with houseplants. That said, this is still a very much engaging read and very easy to read. As mentioned, this is only under 200 pages, so you could easily read this in one sitting. If you've seen her masterclass and Plant One on Me YouTube videos, you'll find familiar things in the book, like, you know, her trip to Singapore and when she talked about her mentor from Mozambique. But this is not exactly a novelization of her YouTube videos or her masterclasses, but it's really a book on its own. But having seen those YouTube videos really complements the stuff that I've been reading in her book. For me, one of the most interesting parts of her book is when she talks about our relationship with plants and why it's not just a trendy millennial thing at the moment. In her first chapter, she talks about the mass migration of people into more urban spaces, especially millennials. It's mostly millennials that are moving into urban spaces. And combined with the toxic stresses that we experience on a daily basis, having a houseplant is probably the easiest, most affordable, and accessible way for us to reconnect with nature. Well, yes, there are Instagram plants that have a really high price tag, but you know, we could always get a plant for just under $5 or even for free. As Rayne said, we don't really need to have hundreds of plants before we start to have a relationship with plants and help us reconnect with nature. And really, there's no such thing as a green thumb. There's a plant for everyone. And in the latter parts of this book, she went into basics of water, soil, and light that gives just enough advice for beginners to be able to take care of their houseplants properly. And she also provided a flow chart to help any plant beginner choose the right plant for themselves according to the space that they have and their lifestyle. So that's the chart right here. It's located at the end of chapter 7. So like an example, I have a very sunny windowsill. I am hands off when it comes to plants. So she recommends cacti and most succulents. And at the end of every chapter as well, she has discussion questions. So this is something that you could use for your book club, or you know, just for self-reflection after you read the book. And as evident in the many testimonials she included in her book from the plant community, taking care of houseplants can provide horticultural therapy and active meditation for us to be able to deal with our toxic stresses, deal with grief and depression, and just simply decompress from the struggles of the day. So another part that resonated with me in the book is when she talked about plant blindness, which is basically where we fail to notice or observe the nature that is around us or how plants affects us on a daily basis because we just got so disconnected with nature. And even if we live in the most urban spaces, nature can be found. So once I read that part in her book, it was quite a revelation for me. And while I was actually walking around the city, I started to notice all the plants that are in the sidewalks, the trees, and even in the shops that I went into and the buildings that I entered, that I wouldn't expect to see a lot of plants, but there they are. And it's just, and another thing that I've noticed also is that because my senses are so stimulated with the nature that I finally notice and observe that's around me, I don't pick up my phone a lot. I don't check my social media while I'm walking, and I pay more attention to my surroundings around me. So I think even if we got into houseplants initially for the aesthetic or just to greenify our spaces, it is inevitable that we will develop that relationship with plants. And Summer Rayne Oak's book is a really good guide to help us reflect and navigate us through that journey with plants. And Summer Rayne also encourages her readers to take that relationship to the next level and to think about our plants beyond our four walls and think about the conservation and preservation of plants in their natural habitat. And while she doesn't really get political in her book, doesn't mention climate change directly, and for me it's almost obvious that our relationship with houseplants is correlated with our passion for climate change, for a more sustainable living, and for us to gain more experiences rather than accumulate more material objects. As we get more connected in the digital space, we are also getting more detached and disconnected with other people in the real world. So relationship with houseplants help us to evaluate and recalibrate our relationship with people. A few things that I have definitely noticed that has changed or at least gained more awareness of is, having a bit more patience and being more forgiving. And that's not just, with our plants, but it's with people, with things, and with ourselves. It's also easier for me to calm myself and focus because, as mentioned, taking care of houseplants does provide a form of therapy and active meditation. And probably the best lesson I've learned from taking care of houseplants is to seek growth, not perfection. In today's world where we can easily pass judgment on others and cancel them, we also deny them and us the opportunity to learn and grow. While plants might not feel pain, I've come to realize that they're more sentient beings than I've originally known. Because if you think about it, plants take care of each other, they recognize their own, they know that in order to survive and thrive, they have to be a part of a community. They also give more than they take, and they're very resilient and very adaptive to change, even in the most difficult situations. There's just so many things we can learn from having houseplants, and by bringing them in our homes, it just makes our world a lot bigger. So yeah, so that's it for my book review of Summer Rayne Oak's How to Make a Plant Love You. I have a more coherent book review in my blog post. The link is down below. Please also check it out. And if you have read the book, please let me know what you think about it and what are your favorite parts. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this book review. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't yet, please follow me on Instagram. My handle is @mywaistislife. So thanks again for watching. Have a plentiful day. Bye.